Hello and welcome to the AIM webinar series. AIM is an alliance enabling the cooperation, development, and standardization of AIDC technologies. From barcodes to RFID to IoT, AIM is your advocate. Any organization with an interest in data collection is a beneficiary of these efforts. Membership provides an opportunity to influence the direction of the industry, develop policies and standards, access market reports, and engage new partners. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to go over. First is our antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activity shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. And then our collaboration and work product policy states that committee meetings as well as webinars are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM's developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. You will also notice that you are muted. You'll be muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, you can send those to me through the Q&A option, which is located at the bottom of your application screen. We'll answer questions at the end of the webinar. Also, this webinar will be recorded and you'll be emailed when it is available. Today, I'm here with Raghu Bala, founder and CEO of NetObjex. Mr. Bala was previously an executive with Yahoo and InfoSpace and has been part of several successful startups. He also teaches at the MIT Sloan School of Business/Computer Science and AI Laboratories course on the implications of artificial intelligence on business, as well as being a tutor for MIT's blockchain course. With all that knowledge and success, Mr. Bala is the perfect expert to discuss today's topic, counterfeiting in the luxury goods space and the solutions available. Raghu, take it away.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to present to all of you today. So I'm going to be talking about counterfeiting in the luxury space. And this is an area that is being afflicted heavily through knockoffs that come into the market from different sources. So before going into the details, let me just give you some background on NetObjex and myself. So NetObjex is a startup which is venture backed by a VC firm out of New York City called Liberty City Ventures. We've got offices in Irvine, California, as well as in India and Vietnam. And currently we manage 12 million digital assets in our platform across multiple industry verticals in several geographies around the world. And we've also been covered by the Gartner Group in their 2020 hype cycle, which was published in Q1 of this year, and also been selected a top startup in several events over the last few years in Holland, Switzerland, the US, Singapore, India, and so on. Just as a high level, I'm going to present a architecture diagram only for the purposes of trying to frame in your minds how the technology solution works under the hood, because later on whatever I'm going to present will actually flow according to this diagram. So if we go from left to right, as a digital asset platform, we collect data from multiple sources. And these sources, if they are physical assets, they tend to be, we collect data through sensors by instrumenting these physical assets. So physical assets could be things like smart buildings, vehicles, street lights, and container shipping, those types of things. And then we can collect feeds. Feeds could be live data of crude oil prices from the New York Mercantile Exchange, for instance. Data files, for example, these could be log files of how consumers are clicking through a website and so on. So that data is usually stored in files. Those could come into our platform. And then apps. All of us are in a kind of an app economy, at least since Android and iOS came into the market. So we all use apps, and almost you don't go anywhere without your phone sort of lifestyle. And so apps collect a lot of data, and that data could be used as well. So that data, whichever source that it comes from, gets into our platform through an edge device or a mobile phone, or there could be other conduits as well. And then it makes it to the cloud, where we run our platform on AWS primarily, and we also have a footprint on Azure. Now, once data is collected, it's stored in a big data repository. Currently, we are standardizing on we have different data sources, but we're standardizing on Snowflake as our data warehouse. And then a lot of times when we instrument systems, we have to talk to existing enterprise systems, which are systems of record. And so these would be your ERP and CRM systems and so on. So SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, those sort of things. And then when we are in any sort of automation, and everything that I'm talking about here is real-time automation. So when we automate things, we will have to communicate with other ecosystem participants who might be on SMS, email, mobile push notifications, and so on. Then we do actuation, which is the ability to send commands back to the edge from the cloud. So the lines that you see here are all bidirectional. And then finally, blockchain. So blockchain is used in a number of interesting ways. Today, we're going to see it being used for the purposes of anti-counterfeiting. And we are sort of blockchain agnostic in the sense that we can talk to a multitude of chains, including Ethereum, Hyperledger, Stellar, Helix, Hashgraph, Algorand, IOTA, and so on and so forth. So we've got sort of drivers for each of these blockchains. So we can store data in any of these chains. And we use these as almost a stamp of approval on the data to ensure that there's a single source of truth. And so blockchain is used in certain use cases, in certain types of transactions, and also when we need to prove the authenticity of certain things. And for regular data that's collected, we store it in a big data repository. Okay, now let's move on and talk about the types of assets. And I've kind of briefly mentioned it already, but so we manage three classes of assets: digital assets, which might be movies, music, avatars, and avatars are appearing in something called the metaverse. And those who are interested can look it up after this call. Metaverse talks about, putting your avatars in things like games, in TikTok videos, things like that. The second type of asset is physical assets. So I mentioned it before: cars, smart buildings, containers, and so on. And then the last type is dynamic assets. Assets which generate data like energy, water, carbon credits, and so on. And so what we do with these types of assets is we do four things actually: track, trace, monitor, and we also tokenize. And that tokenization is becoming more and more prevalent as we move into an economy that is using blockchain in a multitude of ways. And so tokenization becoming a kind of a digital representation of an asset. And ultimately, what is happening in the industry is we are creating these data marketplaces using this digital twin. So digital twin, the word digital twin, just to define a little bit better, is just like you and I have Facebook IDs or LinkedIn IDs, which are our duplicates or our representation online. Your car, your building, and so on can also have a representation online. So that will be its digital twin. And so ultimately, we are going towards a machine economy where these digital twins begin to transact with one another. So I think within this decade, we'll see like autonomous cars being able to pay for parking or toll booth, or even pay for your fast food as you go through the drive-through on its own, because all of these inanimate objects would have their own wallets and so on. Okay, moving on. So now for the topic of the day, which is counterfeiting, and how do we use our platform for the purposes of solving counterfeiting in the luxury space. So, while imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I think a lot of people take that literally, and they start to imitate and create these counterfeits. Actually, a funny story I'll tell you. I used to live in New York City some time ago, and on Fifth Avenue, you have all these branded goods companies with like your Louis Vuittons and Hermes and other high-end brands. and I saw a counterfeiter set up shop literally on the sidewalk next to Louis Vuitton selling the knockoffs. So brazen, and it was hilarious, but at the same time very sad at the same time, because the knockoff looks very similar. Of course, for those who are connoisseurs of high-end luxury brands can see the difference. But then it's like selling at 100th of the price or something like that, and it's happening openly. And I think the brands are being affected and want to put an end to it. So technology has come a long way, and we'll talk about how we're going to go about solving this problem. And in the luxury space itself, we can kind of split it into three buckets, and we're talking about gemstones. But one area that we have spent a lot of time is in the diamond space, where we have a diamond blockchain for authenticity and proof of ownership and so on. We are number 2 in the world with about $5 billion worth of diamonds. Luxury goods, and also, by the way, diamonds is not the only gemstone. Obviously, we have gold, and we have got different types of emeralds and pearls and those types of things, but we also have gold and so on. In the second category, we have luxury, like fashion goods, apparel, handbags, and also we can even, not fashion, but the word luxury, we can throw in things like high-end liquor bottles and things like that. They are in the luxury category, broadly speaking. And then art, which is another category where you have a piece of works of art that have also been sort of like counterfeited. So that's all. These are all huge markets in and of themselves, and the counterfeiting problem is getting worse because a lot of the purchases are happening online. And online, what's happening is people can represent things because you're not touching and feeling and inspecting on a face-to-face basis. It gives more loopholes and opens up the market for more counterfeiting. The market itself for counterfeiting is currently about just under 2 trillion, and it's about to reach 5 trillion within, I think, the next 3 to 4 years. So it's a very, very big market. There are a lot of incentives for people to do it, and that's why we're having this problem. Now, what does it do for these companies who are in the luxury business? Obviously, they lose revenues, but more than just losing revenues, the counterfeiters, by producing defective items. And I like to back up and say one thing. So some people know that they're buying a counterfeit. So if I bought the handbag on the sidewalk as opposed to going into the store in Fifth Avenue, I know I'm buying a counterfeit. So that's one group of people. But sometimes what happens is these counterfeits enter the regular marketplace. That is, you think that you are buying a original, genuine product from a store, but it actually is a counterfeit. Even the retailer does not know it's a counterfeit. And so that is really insidious, because you're now thinking that you're paying high dollar for an item that you think is a genuine, and then it's actually a counterfeit. So that is when the brand's reputation gets soiled, because some of these counterfeits are not produced to the exacting standards of the original or the genuine product, and then it results in a experience that is not optimal, and then the brand loses its reputation. And this is felt in various industries. So, for example, if you buy a high-end handbag and after a few weeks the zipper stops, it breaks or it does not work, then your feeling would be like, I spent $1,000 on this handbag, and it does not function as well, and it's kind of unusable, and just gives you a bad taste in your mouth. And then so when you encounter these problems, the counterfeiters are long gone from the picture, but the brands are now left holding the bag in terms of like customer service and support and dealing with the fallout from the counterfeits. And this is actually pronounced in certain areas. For example, in auto parts and so on, it's a big problem because it causes malfunction of vehicles and stuff like that. And then trust. Sometimes what happens is in the counterfeiting market, let's say if I took my handbag example, the material, the leather in the handbag might come from one supplier. The another supplier might be in charge of doing the what do you call it, the tanning of the leather, and also putting on the logos on the outer side. If you look at many big brands like LVMH and so on, they put their logos everywhere around the bag. And then there might be another company doing the stitching and sewing on the inside of the lining and things like that. So each of these suppliers also have to now be sourcing the materials and getting a genuine product. So the end brand might the end product is a composite of different suppliers, labor and product subproducts that you have to make sure that you as a supplier are supplying authentic material. Because what will happen is if you have some counterfeit piece in your supply chain, the end product would end up being inferior, and then that also causes problems. So ultimately, it's brands are now fighting back, and we'll talk about how technology can be used to thwart this kind of problem. So how are brands countering this challenge, right? So let's talk about that. So now we are going to look at two technologies, and a lot of if you just do a search on the internet, a lot of people talk about blockchain being a solution. It is definitely part of the solution, but for those who are interested, you can definitely look at an article from Harvard Business Review called "What Blockchain Can't Do." So blockchain is a kind of a decentralized repository of data that is not owned by any one company, but it's decentralized in the sense that it's the source of truth is out there in the open for anyone to inspect. The data is secure, it's immutable, and so on. But a blockchain by itself is good as a single source of truth, but then it also depends on the data coming in needs to be pristine in order to be recorded accurately. And so this article on what blockchain can't do, it talks about what we call the last mile problem. So in the last mile is where the physical world, the world that we live in, has to integrate well with the cyber world, which is the world of blockchain and all of the internet, all of the internet, as well as social media and all of these other things that we deal with online, has to somewhat interface with the physical world. So when you're talking about luxury goods and products and so on, these two worlds sort of come together. So a blockchain record by itself is not good enough. You need to have a conduit within the physical product that links the two worlds together. So in that conduit usually tends to be something like QR codes, RFID tags, sensors, and so on. And that provides the sort of linkage between the physical world and the cyber world. Okay, so what do we have to do to sort of thwart this counterfeiting problem? So tags, all of you must be familiar with tags, and we've all seen them over a period of time. And a lot of these tags, the counterfeiters are not, they're not dumb either. They're pretty sophisticated, and they can also find ways around these tags. And so what one has to do as a brand is to figure out a solution that is hard to defeat and always be a couple of steps ahead of the counterfeiters. So in that sort of like mindset, with that mindset, we have developed a solution, partnered with a patented product called Zortag. And the Zortag is actually a three-dimensional optical fingerprint that cannot be cloned, and you cannot repair out of one product and stick it on another product for it to work, because it will destroy its composition, and so it's unclonable, and that makes it extremely a strong line of defense against counterfeiting. And so we're going to show some of this in a video coming up. So here goes the video. This I'm going to keep quiet for a minute, let the video do the talking, and then I'll come back on in a couple minutes. Yeah.
Supply chain vulnerabilities are at the upward push for global luxury brands, which lose over $1.8 trillion yearly to faux sales respectively. Counterfeit products, whether it's an automobile part, a luxury handbag, or diamonds that we buy, can all spell not just loss of reputation for the brand but also loss of 750,000 plus jobs in America alone, and in extreme cases cause harm or maybe loss of life. Billions of dollars are lost every year for intellectual property rights violations. Counterfeiters look for all possible ways to illegally make the most of the investments and innovation of luxury goods manufacturers. The supplier companies should adapt a solution to protect their trademarks and other intellectual property in an increasingly globalized economy. The lack of a unique identification system and a tracking platform lifts the barrier to entry to the market for these frauds. NetObjex's smart solution to track the journey of the product from manufacturing to its journey through the supply chain is one such answer through technology. The basic components of the solution consist of a 2D barcode identifier combined with a unique 3D unreproducible optical fingerprint, an admin panel, a client-side mobile application, and NetObjex platform as a control unit. Let us see how it works. The manufacturer of original luxury goods affixes a special tag called the ZOR tag either on the product itself or in its packaging. The tag is scanned and the details of the product are captured and uploaded to the NetObjex Matrix platform, which in turn makes a blockchain entry for this product using a special, smart contract. This transaction binds the product to the blockchain, which is tamper-proof and immutable and only retrievable using a unique hash. The shipped parts are scanned at every destination point to ensure that they arrive at the location without tampering. This scanned data is appended to the previously tagged information in the blockchain, thus forming a chain of trust, which can be verified. For every transit that the shipment makes, this process of scan and recording on the chain is repeated. When a product is showcased at a retail location, the dealer or retailer can scan the tag using the mobile app. The tag scan will fetch the unique ID, which will then can be validated with the information on the blockchain. Information such as where the product was manufactured and serial number are retrieved from the blockchain and can be verified against the physical item and its serial number. When a properly tagged item is deemed genuine, its status is shown as authentication successful, and the details of the product are displayed. In the event where a scanned item cannot be found on the blockchain, the app displays cannot authenticate. Not only eliminating fraud, but this solution can also help in easy inventory management for the manufacturer, as the unique ID of a product can determine the current status. Switch to the new era of smart tracking solutions with NetObjex.
So that just gives you an overview, and then here are some details on how we actually, the blockchain entry also includes some product information that we store on IPFS, which is a kind of augmentation of the blockchain. It's called interplanetary file system, and the tags themselves are stored on the blockchain, and using an API, one can view the information that is stored through a mobile device. So this way, consumers find it very easy to track, and also they can verify if an item is genuine or not prior to purchase. And then one quick case study would be the diamond case study, where I mentioned gem identity. And in gem identity, what we've done is, so best way to illustrate it would be, first of all, there's a kind of a diamond registry that we've created. It's a global registry. And so if I went to a colleague of mine, Anita, and said to Anita, can you prove to me that you own your car? And then she would show me the DMV registration records. All of us in the US at least have to pay a few $100s a year to have the right to drive your car on the street. So that's your registration. And also it indicates ownership and so on. Now, that proves that you own your car. And if I asked you to prove if you own your house, then there are records at the county level that you can show that shows that you own your home and so on. Now, when it comes to luxury items like diamonds and so on, there is no global registry to indicate that, okay, Anita, you're the owner of this diamond and so on. So that's a problem, and it's a valuable item, might be worth a few $1,000s. And so if it gets misplaced or stolen and so on, there's no way to prove ownership. And also, just like any other asset class, sometimes you might want to use it as collateral to do borrowing, and you can't use it because there's no real direct ownership information. So that leads to a lot of problems. And also the resale value tends to drop and so on due to the fact that of this kind of weak ownership history and so on. And just for the fact, about 40% of all diamonds sold in retail actually use diamonds. So there's no product provenance in this marketplace. So what we have solved is a number of things with this gem identity solution. Actually, every diamond has got a laser inscription on it, and the laser inscription ties to a Gemological Institute of America certificate. And what we do is we take that certificate number along the certificate itself, and the certificate actually talks about the diamond, the 4 C's they call it: color, cut, clarity, and carats. And those determine the value of the diamond. And so this certificate talks about the diamond, and then the global registry talks about the fact that you own that diamond. So both of this is stored on the blockchain. Whenever and what we do simultaneously is create something known as an NFT, which is a non-fungible token. So that means we are tokenizing this illiquid asset, and so that if later on you wanted to sell it, the NFT gets moved from your wallet to the wallet of the next owner. At the same time, the record gets moved from Anita to, let's say, she sells it to a friend, Mary. Mary's name will be on the blockchain as the next owner. Or if Anita wanted to, let's say, collateralize this asset and get a loan against it, she can go to a financial institution, a lending institution, and they can verify that she is the owner on the blockchain, and then do a loan to asset value based on their risk profile, and give her a loan for a certain percentage of the value of the diamond. So all of this is possible by virtue of the fact that now we have a global registry with ownership records and so on. And so ultimately, the sort of solution consists of a number of things coming together: the global registry, the NFT to tokenize the physical asset, the blockchain itself, and then in this case, there's no tag, but then we have the laser inscription acting like the physical world conduit. So always there has to be a last mile conduit, whether it's a tag or inscription and so on. So once we put all of these 4 pieces together, then you have a pretty strong defense against counterfeiting. So that brings us, I believe, to the end of our presentation today. I'm open to taking your questions at this time.
Thank you, Raghu, for your time and knowledge today. And once again, we still have time if you want to add some questions there. Once again, at the bottom of the screen is a Q&A option where you can chat those to me. The first question we have is, well, blockchain definitely is considered a single source of truth. There is also chatter amongst technologists that quantum computers may be a threat to blockchain in the future. What is your opinion on this?
Yes, that's a very good question, and it's actually accurate. And I think that what will happen is So actually, security, if you know, there is a DES and then AES, which are encryption standards, and these usually come from the Department of Defense and so on. And currently, I believe it's SHA-256, which is 256 bits of encryption. And what happens with quantum computing, there's something in the computer field called Moore's law, that computer CPU power multiplies, doubles every 18 months. But then quantum computing, I think it'll not just double like it's been doing. It will take a kind of a huge leap forward, maybe 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. And so what people are afraid of is the current encryption standards would be broken. So for those who are into cryptography and so on, encryption is nothing but saying to someone, you can break this through brute force, but your computing power would take a very long time that you'd give up. So it's not that it cannot be broken, it's just going to take a very long time. With the current 256-bit encryption, the rough wait time is about 40 years for you to crack a code. So now if you have quantum computing, and let's imagine that 40 years now becomes 4 days, that would put a lot of systems at peril because people will be breaking things left and right. And so a lot of the security that is sort of guaranteed by blockchain would become not that unsurmountable anymore or insurmountable anymore. So what happens is, so that is what people are afraid of. And so what I believe will happen is the folks that create these blockchain protocols will have to fork their protocol and then introduce higher levels of encryption and to prevent loss of information. So that's what's going to happen. And I think the question is good, and I think this is what the outcome would be.
Great, thank you. I'm going to combine a couple questions I got here that are somewhat similar. Basically, what are countries' governments doing to protect their people from counterfeits, and are governments working together, or is it each country for themselves?
So right now, I don't know of any concerted global effort. What I've seen is some consortiums springing up here and there to create, like identity management solutions and so on. But I don't see a kind of a concerted effort from a number of countries to cause counterfeits to stop. And also, I'll tell you, counterfeiting is kind of, let me give you two flavors of it to give you an idea of how difficult a problem this is. So we all think that, okay, someone creates a product, let's say it's an electronics product, and some other person reverse engineers it and creates a kind of a, knockoff, which is inferior. And that's what we think. But sometimes what happens is, let's say I'm a branded goods manufacturer, and I have a third-party contract manufacturer. So I give the contract manufacturer, let's say, just to make it very simple, I give them $100 to make 100 widgets. Okay, so $1 per widget. That's what they're supposed to manufacture. But what the contract manufacturer does is he produces 110 widgets. So 100 which are branded, and then the 10 are sort of like, they came from the same foundry, but they are floating around, but they are not sort of authorized products. They're just excess that has been created. And that is even more difficult to track because it looks like the same quality, but it didn't come from the manufacturer. It was excess supply that somehow made its way into the supply chain through other channels. So you have both those types of things. So, but anyway, coming back to the question, I think there's the efforts are being, sort of every brand for themselves sort of approach right now, as far as I can see. So.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, obviously counterfeiting's all over in luxury goods, foods, pharmaceuticals, automotives, so on and so forth. Do blockchain solutions seem like the best avenue to trace in all these markets? And how much would a platform like Zortag need change to work in those markets?
So we are actually using Zortag with our platform in automotive and luxury goods, and I think also we are looking at the high-end liquor market and so on. So I think the applicability of whether it's Zortag or some other last mile solution, because Zortag is good for certain things, but let's say that we've got problems in automotive where it's not at the part level that you purchase at the store, but actually sometimes the tags have to be put inside the engine itself and withstand very high heat and so on. So there are different types of tags that will work under those conditions. But the solutions are now coming about that are applicable across different industries, and then each solution is sort of geared towards certain conditions, form factors, and so on. So, for example, in apparel, we might use a different type of tag that can withstand washing. Putting it through a wash cycle in your washing machine and so on. So it should be able to withstand that type of treatment. Automotive like withstand a lot of heat, and then in certain things like at retail you can use things like Zortag, and I think these solutions are now available, and I think counterfeiters can start to counterfeiting can be thwarted quite. You can take some definitive action at this point. So.
Great. Another question we received is it a single source of truth when users may all be on different platforms?
So you mean like they are using different types of blockchains, or okay? So I'll try to answer it. So if actually even in blockchains there is no single, we are coming to a world where we are talking about heterogeneous chains right now. So if you start to use technologies like Cosmos and so on, it is like a blockchain of blockchains. So that means like, let's say that certain, in our case, we are starting to use Algorand as our chain because of its low transaction costs and so on. But let's say that you have 5 different brands and they all want to be on different chains, and you want to have a single way of trying to track everything with a single app or something like that, then you could federate these chains using technologies like Cosmos and so on. So that is the federation of blockchains also happening. I think that's what the question is about when they talk about different platforms. But if there's something else, I'm happy to answer. So.
Okay, great. Another question we received is individual authentication required in the distribution chain to record movement, or does the solution aggregate into cases and pallets?
So we can do both. It depends on how the distributor wants to track it. So we can do it at a aggregate level, like a pallet level, and then the that could then sort of like show the breakdown into its component levels. But if it's at a pallet level, you don't want to open the pallet and start scanning each one inside it and so on. So I would say that if we are going to do shipping at this at a pallet level and so on, I would use a strategy which is twofold strategy. I would use like a passive or active RFID, actually active RFID for the containers and the packaging. If it's a very high-end item, active RFID, or even they're not that inexpensive. But if you are trying to protect a $10,000 item, a $20 piece of active RFID tag is not so expensive. But if it's a very inexpensive item, then you have to have passive tags or things like that. Now, what happens is within the item itself, you can use a Zor tag, which can be a second level item level protection. But at the packaging level, if you want to scan through shipping lanes and so on, just use active RFID, and that way you can kind of scan through at a kind of aggregate level quickly.
Okay, great. Thanks you. Another question we received is, what are the dimensions of the Zor tag? How is it integrated into packaging?
Yeah, it's small. I would actually a Zor tag where it can be put on the casing. What we have done is actually integrated into our platform for digital asset management. So the tag itself is about, I would say, half an inch by 1 inch, roughly. Each tag is not very big, but you can put in the packaging or you can put it on the actual item itself. So it depends on the object that you're trying to place it on. Sometimes you can put it on the inside of the packaging so that people don't rip it out or something like that. But it's a small tag. It's not very big.
Okay, another question we have is, the application on the phone is a special proprietary app, not a generic scanning app.
Yes, that's someone who knows their stuff is asking this question, which is very good because that's intelligent question. Because to thwart, we need to have a special reader because the tag itself needs a special SDK and reader. And yes, the regular readers won't read the tag, and but it's you can download it from the App Store and so on. We have the SDK that can be added to any branded app as well. So, and it will go from tag to blockchain automatically, and it's kind of cool actually, and can be added to anything, any existing apps that people might have. So.
Great. So another question regarding the Zor tag is, it makes the claim that the QR code cannot be replicated. Is this if the technology is truly excellent, can governments in different nations who print currencies use this technology?
So it won't be used for currencies because it's something which is too big for a dollar bill and things like that. Like even a half inch by 1 inch is kind of, and also it's got a kind of a small bubble with pebbles in it. If you looked at the pictures, so it is not. How do I say? I wouldn't put it on currency, but it could be put on certain types of goods. And in the case of currency and so on, I think they're using certain other types of mechanisms like ink based, unreproducible, sort of like I forget the word, but almost like markers within the ink that prevent counterfeiting. So they have come a long way in the US dollar bill and so on. There are many sort of like I don't know, striations that you can see in the dollar bill if you put it up against a light, and you can see that they have different markers that prevent it from being duplicated. And also the paper parchment that is used is very hard to produce. So yeah, currency, they have different techniques, but this one is more for physical goods. But it's patented. This one, by the way, it's patented technology. So.
Great. Another question we have is, have you tried using browser-based Zor tag recognition like mobile camera web app, or is that on the roadmap?
Oh, using the Zor tag for browser-based. So what we do is in the browser, instead of you have to it was not part of this video, but we have it for e-commerce based purchasing. So for post-purchase verification that you really got the real deal, or even while you're browsing to shop, what you can do is the vendor can can display the Zor tag ID, and actually we want to do in post-purchase, because pre-purchase, if I put the Zor tag ID on the screen, then someone could easily clone the website. So post-purchase, what we've done is you can type in the Zor tag ID to verify its provenance and things like that. So let's imagine I bought a good from online. I get it shipped and it comes to my home, and then I can now do post-purchase verification as well. So on the browser itself, pre-purchase, because the Zortex got a 3D element, it's not 2D that I can just use a phone to go and scan. It's got a 3D part of it that will be hard to do online. We need to use other methods. Pre-purchase, it will be hard to do.
Okay, great. Another question we have is basically, I think they're trying to say in some cases, is blockchain overkill for most use cases? If you are a single brand, why would you need this level of redundancy?
Yeah, so I mean, the issue is if you have a consortium, and then one of the earlier questions was there was a concerted effort, and I think ultimately what, at least this is my hope as to what should happen, is the luxury or branded goods manufacturers band together to kind of thwart, instead of being divided, they fall, united, they stand sort of approach, where they come together with a single consortium blockchain, where all of the goods are in a single chain, at least for the purposes of counterfeit detection. And then and the last mile tags can vary, but then the consumers have a single app to check just on this part. It does not devalue any brand, but it makes it more frictionless for the consumer to quickly download an app to check if it's a single blockchain. Now, what happens is each vendor, like what the participant asking the question is saying is, each brand has their own blockchain. Is that overkill? Now, it depends. So recently, about a couple of years ago, we participated with the largest apparel manufacturer in the world. It's a big brand that you'll find in many malls throughout America and Europe and so on. And they worked with us, and when we worked with them on their supply chain, these apparel manufacturers, for example, they have many suppliers downstream. Okay, so for example, if they wanted to produce a shirt, the buttons will come from one country, the threads for sewing will come from another place, the fabric will come from another place. It's sent to another location for dyeing and putting the print on and all sorts of things. So you might have half a dozen suppliers just to make one shirt. And so what happens is all the suppliers also have to participate in the ecosystem. And now let's say that one or two are bad actors and they start to fudge data, there'll be a problem. So even within a single brand, you might want to have a blockchain which includes only your suppliers in a consortium blockchain. So that's when it won't be overkill. It'll be kind of useful, so that all of your suppliers are not sort of like, they all act according to, do what they're supposed to do. So that's when I'd say that blockchain is a good solution.
Okay, great. That wraps up our question and answer session here, Raghu. Thank you again for your time and insight there. I don't know if you want to move to the next slide to give out your contact information here.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any additional questions or comments for Raghu or for AIM even, we have this contact slide here that you can take down that information. Raghu, I just want to thank you and your team again for joining us here today and providing these insights. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And once again, I want to thank the audience for their time and participation as well. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.